roll?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so let's start there. Let's start with morning gratitude.
Yes. Morning gratitude, my favorite thing.
You are probably the single biggest reason we get followers. I started it. The show's about you. I'm going to briefly, but I want to give a shout out to Morning
No,
Gratitude.
no. Yeah, we need to talk about this for sure.
So I start doing this thing with sober buddies, and it's not uncommon. Many 12-step people or people who are about whatever self-improvement have like, hey, let's send each other our gratitude list in the mornings. It's like a thing, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of, well, let's back up actually even more. Let's not assume, because we do this stuff all the time. So it is my experience has been, hey, if you're feeling shitty or you're depressed or you're whatever, a good way to start the day is just focus on the thing you're grateful for. And I always tell people it can be as simple as my iPhone, a roof over my head, my car, or it could be really long and complex, which I'm always crediting you for finding new things every day, which we can talk about. So I have friends that we send it to each other back and forth, and kind of after I talked about it a little bit on Tina's podcast, people, like, I just kept messaging people, and I was like, well, I should just start something. I should just, and anytime I've sort of trusted my gut business-wise around or whatever, and I just start something, it seems to go well. So I put up this Instagram thing, and it, like, literally around the world, it's getting traction, which is like really cool.
Right.
And then you saw it, you began posting it. And so when I would ask people how they heard, honestly, 9 times out of 10, it was you. So let's talk about your experience with gratitude.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've had a gratitude was really big for me, especially after like my first round of injuries and whatnot, to kind of like pull myself out of a funk. And then I remember when you started, it was like, God, it was around, I think, Thanksgiving of last year, November of last year, or no, sometime around then. I was going through a really rough period. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to hop on board this train and do this. And fun fact, I have never missed a day. I've never missed a day. Even when I was at Berkeley and had like limited cell phone service, like
That's
the
impressive.
one time where I went out to like go get cell phone service, I was like, post a morning gratitude. Now, if I go back to racing where I'm like racing for multiple days, then at some point I'm going to have to deal with missing a day of morning gratitude. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the number of people that have reached out to me and said like, I started doing this before Heads of You, or some people, and it's really impressive. And I'm like, I never take credit for it. I'm always like, I just hopped on the bandwagon. I'm just fortunate enough to have, a large platform of people that follow me, which, is an honor. And so they see it. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it. And people are like, how do you come up with new things every day? And I'm like, there are some repeats. There are repeats. But like for me, sometimes it's really hard. I'm like, I don't know. And like a lot of times it's things that I wish like that I'm working on, like I'm really working on being grateful for what I can do and what I can't, not what I can't do, and I'm like, motherfucker, but I really want to do that thing, like,
right.
So it's not, a lot of it is kind of like reminders to myself of like almost intentions for the day, not so much like, man, I'm so grateful for like my Mac computer, Woo.
Right. But I seem to fall on that. I think without being super unwoke, here it comes. Women are genuinely better at kind of getting into these like nice, long, pretty details. Like, and men are like, I got my house, I got my jacket, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, so I like, right. So, and that's the thing that I noticed right away. And, I talked to you about this a little bit, that like, should I turn this into a business? Like, is it okay? And there definitely seems to be this whole like sort of sobriety and self-help coaches now and this whole other thing. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, because it might seem icky, but am I helping people? Blah, blah, blah. So the short answer is I haven't done anything with it business-wise. My wife took over the account because I was too busy, and my wife's making art, and we've trying to figure out maybe we can make money with that, maybe not. But my wife loyally every day reposting people's posting
Pretty
her.
impressive.
Yeah.
She's like the hero.
She's on it, dude.
Yeah.
But of all the like the various things I've tried, it is the thing that like quickly went like literally around the world. Like, holy moly, here's somebody in Singapore, here's somebody in Europe or whatever. So, you know, I think, you know, for me, I try to give myself like some decent like rules about it. Like I could go Stacy, Emma, Jackson, River, right? There's 4 out of 10 every day.
Right, every day, yeah.
Kind of cheating, right? So I try to focus on something, right? I try to be like, you know, like River's smile or Emma's this or whatever. But I do think, like, tell me what your experience is that, and again, I tell people this, it's not as though there I wrote this, there I feel better. It's just something about the discipline and the practice that works for me.
It's like creating, for me, it's like creating awareness about what kind of is going on in my life. It gives me a few minutes in the beginning of the day to kind of like focus. And sometimes it's really hard. It's like, sometimes I'll sit there and stare at the paper and I like have to walk away and get some coffee and like come back and like stare at the paper again. But I think it forces you to kind of slow. And this is something I've realized through a lot of therapy and whatnot, is that like the act of writing something down is so much more powerful than just like thinking it in your head. Because you can sit there and be like, man, I'm super grateful for that. But like, when you like take an action, put it into words, then, you know, it kind of changes it. It makes it more real. But the other thing that I've noticed, and it's funny, I've had thoughts about getting into this kind of like gratitude fatigue, you know, because no. So hear me out on this. So I remember, like, one of my favorite quotes is, the struggle ends when the gratitude begins. But I have that like inscribed and I put it on my, like a bracelet on my wrist, as a reminder. But I almost took that in a way that was like, I'm not allowed to struggle, like, and feel, you know, that it's almost like, if you struggle, just think of all the things that you should be grateful for, because you're not allowed to struggle because you have all these things. And so now I've kind of like evolved and been like, I can hold space for the fact that like life is shitty and like I have some things going on that I'm not happy about, but I can also hold space for like the really good things. And like, it doesn't have to be all one or the other. So that's been important for me, I think.
I think that's great. I think people from just their own, the word ignorance sounds not so nice, but just like, you know, this rush to fix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, you just had a bad breakup and, oh, you'll find somebody better. And it's like, it's not really what I want to hear.
Yeah.
Right. Like I kind of need to be in, like, I'm grieving that I lost this person that I really loved for all these reasons. So, I think that's really important. I think that's a good phrase, like hold the space for it. Like it's okay to like be sad or for it to suck or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. But, and like, so it doesn't have to be like, oh, doesn't have to be like, buck up, you have so much to be grateful for. You know? There are children starving in Africa, you know, like that kind of argument, which I just think is overplayed, you know, like it doesn't diminish how you feel. I think that it is just about like a morning routine and a practice.
So is your practice to do it first thing? Do you run first? What is your daily deal?
Yeah. So I wake up and make coffee and sit at the table and do that. That's the first thing. Cause if you notice, I post them at like 4:00 in the morning. So clearly, well, no, not that anybody is like hyper focused on that, but yeah. So it's first thing for me.
And then depending on your, whatever you got going on, it's usually a run next.
Yeah. Depending on, you know, the state of my injured piece of shit body and things like that, it's normally a run next.
Now, if I were your therapist, would I allow you to make a statement like that?
I know. Okay, I'm working on this. Sometimes I use humor as like self-deprecation.
Of course.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and then so it's normally get up, coffee, breakfast done, and morning gratitude, and then off to train, off to work, et cetera, et cetera.
So before we get into sort of more recent stuff, I did want to ask you, you know, I know you've always kind of had this sort of mixed reaction and or acceptance of your general level of fame. I just did air quotes.
Yeah.
Um, you know, clearly you're someone who's, you know, has a day job to pay the bills, but has had sponsorships and had, you know, race winnings and things go well for you in that sort of career. You know, you've sort of had these like two paths.
Yeah.
And I would say it's been exponential since you kind of stopped racing OCR, like in the last, like since the last time we talked. And it's
Yeah.
not just about genuine Instagram followers. It's just like, I didn't want to get in this specific part right away, but like the recent blog post was like
Yeah.
shared by Outside Magazine and shared by Runner's World. And like that wouldn't have happened 3 or 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, just I don't know, what's been happening the last few years, and what's that been like? What do you have a reason for it? Like you've raced less yet done like you're like your overall profile's gotten bigger.
Yeah, I honestly, it's something that that has caused me a lot of internal conflict, because it's super flattering. Like it is. I mean, I think that you know, people genuinely just want to kind of like relate to somebody, and a lot of people have told me that I became way more relatable when I stopped crushing everything in life. You know, like it's cool when somebody is like winning and on top of podiums, you know, and wins, and then it's like sweet. They're like, you kind of, you admire them, but you can't relate to them. And it's almost kind of like when I started getting knocked down a bunch, then people started being like, oh, she's human and we can like relate to her. And so, I mean, but I think some days I'm just like, I don't know, like I'm just like a person living my life. Like I don't, it's super flattering, but it's like, it's not like I'm trying to get people to like follow me. Like I don't like promote myself or things like that. But I think it also in some ways is kind of, it's a double-edged sword, because you start to gain, or I've noticed like I got to a point with social media where I was like, okay, this is great. Like I'm flattered. All these people are interested in me. And then I'm like, but what happens if they stop losing interest, you know? And then then I like lose, like, and then that fear of what would happen, you know, like when my 15 minutes of fame is up started to become almost paralyzing. And I was like, I can't, I mean, like that was kind of like the is like a dark side to it. And I still don't, you know, have an answer for that at all. I think I've had to like reformulate my relationship with, you know, like social media and things like that to kind of piece through that. But yeah, I don't know. It's, I think I always say with OCR, I feel like I was the right place, right time, you know, I
Right.
was like early on, like kind of like, you know, a pioneer in it. And I somehow managed, I don't like the crossover appeal. So I don't know. That's all I got.
Did you happen to watch any of the exciting action from Minnesota this past weekend?
Oh, the CrossFit Games?
Yeah.
I did not know. Why?
Not even our boy Hunter?
No, I did not watch Hunter. I heard, I mean, I know he made it through like one round, right? Which is
Right.
awesome. Yeah. But
Yeah, so, you know, I'm on the record as saying, you know, I don't understand like why we're watching people jump on boxes or walk on their hands. That's not fitness to me. That's CrossFit specifically.
yeah.
Um, but I've paid a little bit more attention this year, and certainly, you know, like Hunter's like representing all of us, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, of course he was taking tons of shit. And so he makes the first cut, and he's literally like joking about the handstand walks. He's literally like a handstand walk away from making it through the next one, and he fell.
Right.
And he had to like go back and do it again, and basically he finished last in that round. And
yeah.
and I really was hoping he made it to the second day, just to like, he wouldn't have made it past that maybe, although the next event was like some ruck run that he would have done well at. I don't want to get too into the weeds about it, but anyway, I think he's fired up. I think he wants to do it more. And then I did end up watching it because I could appreciate the fitness, as it were, of some of those people. It's just still such a weird, like, I guess it's how people feel about OCR. I just like don't really like, I just don't get it. I mean, I know you've done CrossFit.
I actually love watching CrossFit. I think CrossFit Games are super fun to watch. I think CrossFit has it figured out in terms of how to make how to make a sport like a viewer sport. I mean, I think because it's so contained in one area, I think that that's what OCR has really struggled with, is like, how do you make this something that people want to sit down and watch, like on TV? And clearly ultra running hasn't figured that out, because I mean, that's even like worse than OCR in terms of time and length, and it's just people running, you know? It's
right.
not
But let's back up real quick on that. Okay. Because I used to think we were like similar in sort of like these niche, like little pockets, but then I look at like the people who I sort of compare myself to in terms of like, oh, they're just these passionate people making content about stuff. Like Ginger Ruther or Billy Yang or these guys. And they're killing it. And I always think ultra running's this weird fringe thing, but apparently not.
Well, so they do well. What I'm saying is in terms of live broadcast, like people want to watch, people love ultra running for the stories and so like, you know, the films that they put out afterwards, like that Ethan and Billy put out, like are really well done, you know, and people love that. But like, no one's going to well, I don't want to say no one, but like, no one's going to sit down and watch a live stream of like a 24-hour. Well, I mean, no, I could take that back, because of like Desert Solstice, the 24-hour track run, they had a live stream of that. Jamil had like a live stream of 24 hours around a freaking track, and people tuned in and watched.
Right.
So I guess there is a market for it, but it's probably still very small. Yeah.
And I'm not even talking even about like their super well produced, you know, freaking, you know, I can't think of the name of Ethan's Barkley movie, but I'm just talking. I'm just talking about in general, like just putting out content on the reg, whatever that phrase is.
Regular.
Anyway, I'm just constantly fascinated and, you know, like trying to figure it out. A, because it's obviously how I make my living, but B, just because just like a curiosity point, like, well, what, like, because trail run, I guess, because maybe trail running still going this way while the 5Ks are going down. Is that it? Like people are like bored and
I think people are looking for like longer and longer, you know, everyone's like going up, like they're like, well, 100-miler isn't enough, so let's do a 200-miler, you know? And I think that like running overall, like road running is kind of like decreasing, but I think the ultra thing is still taking off, you know, and in OCR, we've kind of seen, you know, better, but I mean, I believe we're kind of flatlined right now.
Right. And but we have been for a really long time.
Yeah.
The flat line, which like kind of scares me, but then I'm like, I think I've told you before, like you've seen at every Spartan, you're going to see someone that's like so happy, going after my first trifecta this year, like the new converts. I know you don't pay attention, but did you hear the big news? Did you hear
about Warrior Dash?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I heard that. I mean, and it's sad to me. Like my take on it, look, Spartan's going to survive. Spartan will survive. I think, you know, there have been talks about Tough Mudder circling the drain for a long time, which makes me it makes me really sad, because like, I started out at Tough Mudder, and I am going back to World's Toughest Mudder this year solely because not solely, but like, I'm afraid it's going to be the last one. Like, I'm pretty, like my thought pattern.
Crewing or running?
I ideally would like to run.
Now, listen, Amelia, you and I have a long history, and I dare never ask you, what are you doing next? Because I know that everyone hounds you for what you're doing next, but then you just said it. So now I have to ask you, like, I assumed you meant crewing for your buddy, but now you're saying maybe you run it?
I want to run it. Will I run it competitively? Probably not. You know, like I think I'm going out there, like I'll go out there and I'll room with like the Four Eyes guys and whatnot, and maybe I'll just join Team Four Eyes, you know, like, and just because I just want to be out there and be with the folks, you know, like I kind of feel like it would be coming full circle in like my journey. I don't really know if I ever have an itch to get back to like super competitive OCR stuff, but I feel like I need some closure, or I want some closure
around that. They actually announced today that King of the Swingers is coming back, so that was exciting. I just posted that.
Ooh,
I know, right? Like
then I'm definitely going, because we all know that is my favorite obstacle.
Well, it's literally the most fun obstacle ever. I mean, literally, like that's just like kind of hands down the best obstacle. We kind of didn't know how good we we had it. But yeah, it's been super weird to watch this crazy Tough Mudder. Like I think we all kind of knew Will Dean wasn't in it for the long haul. He's the opposite of Joe, right? Like he's more of a business person than like a let's get dirty guy. But yeah, dude, it was weird to watch them sort of circle the drain, as you said. And the Warrior Dash thing, if you had asked me, if Warrior Dash finished out the year and then said, hey guys, we had 10 great years, our heart's not really in it.
Right.
But to stop mid-year does seem weird because it's like, they clearly have made, it's like, I just don't get it. Like, you know, they made $1 gazillion with their, whatchamacallit festival.
Right.
What's it called?
With their festival?
Yeah, they produced the Firefly Festival, which was this huge event in Chicago, I think.
Oh, I don't. Well, because Red Frog does much more than Warrior Dash.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But so they had the money to. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, it seemed odd
that they stopped. Yeah.
And you know, Joe, is like just wants to be the last one standing. Like that's his whole purpose in life at this point. So.
Right. Well, as soon as obstacle racing becomes synonymous with Spartan, you know.
Right.
But I mean, you have Rugged Maniac, you have Savage Race, you still have other races going strong. So who knows? I mean, I feel like Spartan is kind of is going to end up like Ironman, and I've said this for a very long time. It's kind of like going the Ironman path, you know, which is great. There are other triathlons other than Ironman. It's just that everybody knows Ironman as a brand, you know?
Right. And they used to know Tough Mudder and Spartan, but it seems like you said, like Tough Mudder is not as strong.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's business, I guess.
So, so let's talk about recent ish news.
Yes.
When did you decide to go into
treatment?
Is it called treatment? Rehab? Treatment?
Yeah, treatment. We call it program treatment. I mean, people have different names. Yeah. To be honest, I actually started toying with the idea about a year ago, probably around this time, just because I knew I wasn't doing that great. Like I was starting to have just more thoughts, more like I just like I knew I was kind of falling back into like some not great patterns. But I kind of was like, you know, I could write this ship on my own, blah, 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 do some outpatient. But I actually have finally, this past winter, I made the call to Opal up there in Seattle, and then a couple other places around the Bay Area. And then was kind of like, just out of curiosity to see what the options were. And then I remember I called, I had settled. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Opal. And then I called them back. I was like, no, I want to run Barkley first. Clearly, because I was like, you know, like I can't go into treatment and then miss Barkley.
Right. Of course.
But I think that with the stress fracture in the calcaneus, and then I was like, Barkley's off the table. And I was like, you can't stop putting this off anymore. You know, there's never going to be a good time. I'm always going to miss things, but maybe this is the writing on the wall that it's time to go. So I think it was the beginning of March, I called them and I was like, I'm going to go crew at Barkley, and then I'm going to fly across the country, and then I'm going to drive up to Seattle, and I'm going to go into treatment. But it was also a matter of figuring out how to take a leave of absence from work, which was real. I mean, it's not hard. You're protected by the FLMLA and stuff, but ego-wise, it's really hard to be like, I need to leave. As a person who's prided herself on being able to do everything all the time, to be like, I need to take a leave of absence from work was really hard for me to say. And then also to navigate, because I didn't really know what to tell people, why I was leaving. It was kind of awkward, but yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's like in the old days, before everybody knew somebody, in recovery from alcohol or drugs, going to, what's the famous place?
Betty Ford?
Yeah, going to Betty Ford was this whole stigma, right? What's
yeah.
your problem? You can't handle your drinking, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, I think maybe even still there's a little bit about that, but I think, you know, with other things like eating disorders, I don't think it's still pretty in the dark. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think more and more, I mean, it's typically thought of, and I hate to say this, is like as a younger person's issue, you know, like you hear about a lot of like adolescents going through eating disorders and whatnot. You don't talk as much about, and I had this stigma in my head that I was like, I'm 35 years old. I shouldn't still be dealing with this. You know, like I went through treatment and stuff like that starting when I was 15. And I remember when I was 15 at the time being like, I'm not going to be one of these people dealing with this, you know, in 20 years, you know, because I was thinking literally in my mind as a 15-year-old, I was like, well, because, you know, I'm going to have like 2 kids and be married. So like, I don't going to care what I look like and things like that. But little did I know that like an eating disorder, for at least for me, has been very, very little about body image in general, like very, very little. If at times like non-existent part of it. But yeah, so I think that in terms of just being an older person going into treatment was a little bit harder when you have an entire life around you. And I can't even imagine, you know, I was in program with women who are mothers and things like that. And even in that issue as well, you know, taking time away from your kids has to be tough.
Well, can you explain it for other folks? So listen,
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed to say, so when I first got sober in AA, when I was like 27, 28, there was like an OA meeting that got out, like Overeaters Anonymous meeting that got out like right before ours started. And like, I expected all these very large people to come out, and it was very young, attractive, you know, thin women. And I was like, what is that about? Right? Like I was that stupid that like, or not stupid, but just that ignorant. There's that word again. So like, oh, like there's more to overeating than just being overweight.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, so what's interesting is that when the model for treatment of eating disorders has changed over the years, and especially, you know, in the 20 years since I first went into treatment. So when I was in residential treatment, when I was 22, right after college, it was a 12-step based program. And we were there at like a residential facility, but then we went out to OA meetings, which is Overeaters Anonymous for people who don't know. And I think I remember first being like, wait, but I deal with anorexia. Like, what am I going to an Overeaters Anonymous meeting for? But it was kind of like, it was all the same language around food. You know, that it doesn't matter whether you're overeating, undereating, like it's the same. It just manifests itself in a different way. And in those, and I actually really liked the 12-step community. I really liked like, you know, that I felt very included. I actually like to go into AA meetings more. I think it was just a stronger community than OA, even though I couldn't really relate to like the alcohol problem, but like, you know, I just kind of used it as like an analogy. And so when I look back into treatment this time around, I was trying to find like 12-step programs, and I realized that most places don't use 12-step as an eating disorder recovery like model anymore, because they don't view food as an addiction. And I know that's still actually kind of controversial, but it's very different so alcohol, drugs, your solution is to abstain. You know, the solution is to not be around it. You have to eat food every single day to live. So it's really hard to kind of wrap your brain around being addicted to it when it's something that you need to do to survive. And so like, and that was always my thing too. I think that the relapse rates, I guess, in OA were so much higher than AA because you have to eat food like 3 times a day or things like that. Well, we won't get into fasting, folks, but in general, you have to face it every day. So that was a very long answer that I don't even remember what the question was, but just saying so it wasn't, don't really follow 12-step anymore, but yeah.
So,
kind of that background.
You know, I'm someone that's sober from drugs and alcohol 19 years, it'll be 20 in October, but I try not to say it beforehand because it's,
Congratulations.
thank you, because it's, and I can't, trust me, I can't believe it either. So my wife and I are both sober, like around the same time. And every time our birthdays come around, we have the same feeling like, I didn't slip once. Is it possible that it's been this long? Because like, I can't even remember things, right? Like 20 years ago, like I can't even remember. It's like, what? So, but I have experience with sex addiction and porn addiction. And I don't know if I've ever said that, like, on a podcast. I'm saying it now. We can get more into it later, but I know that right, with drugs and alcohol and it's abstinence. That's the solution. You put the plug in the jug and you stop, and that's the way it is. And with these other things, that like eating, absolutely, and then a normal sex life, whatever that means, like these are things that like you could go without, but they're way harder. The recidivism rates are through the roof because what's normal. And
exactly.
And I can even say, and I'm not someone that's ever done a food program, but even just in recent years, getting sober off everything else, and now to actually like care about my weight, which I've never cared about, it's weird and it's hard because like, again, not to compare myself because it's a different thing, but like I do kind of think about every single thing I eat, and I don't want to. I want to just enjoy the fucking piece of cake.
Well, and that's the issue is that like, and I don't believe that our society has caused eating disorders, like, but I believe that diet culture doesn't help, it clearly doesn't help, because what happens, and this is actually why I avoided treatment for so long, is because I was like, I have a fucked up relationship with food. Well, so does everybody else, it seems like. So how do I know that mine is actually a problem? Like where it sees that everybody, it's normal to do a 3-day fast or blah, 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 or only eat one meal a day. And so it's like, well, okay, then if everyone else is so screwed up, like why am I needing treatment? But I got to a point where it was so all consuming in my life. And it was clearly preventing me from doing things that I love to do because like it wasn't feeding my body properly. So I was breaking everything and I couldn't, and I couldn't engage in sport and life the way that I wanted to. So, and it affected relationships, and for me, I was like, maybe everybody else has a like disordered relationship with food, but it's not going to stop me from trying to work on my own.
Well, and I can tell you that I have certainly begun to notice it because my wife eats super clean. And so thankfully I get to eat super clean, and it's changed my relationship with food. And there's a couple, and I've talked about these before, but there's just a couple of sort of basic tenements that are mind blowing when they first occur, which is, okay, number one, everything does not have to be a party in your mouth, right? Because as a society, right, and I'm going to say, I'll speak personally, but like, as it better be amazingly delicious, covered in things which, as my wife has pointed out, aren't even really food, right? Like they just aren't. Like look at a commercial for fucking Chili's or Applebee's, or like, we've made this thing and it's not really food, dude. It's just this conglomeration of textures and flavors that are like not good for you.
But so what I am going to point out and challenge you on, and this is something that it was actually really hard for me to wrap my brain around when I was in treatment at Opal, is that there is room for all foods, for processed foods in your life. The issue is that now we have attached, yes, maybe ideally in an ideal world, we should all eat wholesome, quote unquote, clean food. But the value judgments that we then attach to the food doesn't need to be there. So it's like I remember going into treatment and being like, we were forced to eat like quote unquote fun foods every day, which would be, something like M&Ms or like something like, like that isn't, because a lot of people struggle with kind of this idea that they must eat clean or whatnot. So I think that we've taken almost that clean eating thing way too far as a society. Like, yes, maybe processed foods aren't ideal, and that you shouldn't, that like every single day of your life, maybe you should eat some fruits and vegetables and whatnot. but like there is room for all foods. Like no foods are bad foods. And that's been something that's kind of like been tough for me to like struggle with.
That's yeah, because then I can't judge you and be better than you, and what fun is that?
Right. Exactly. I can't look down upon your food choices.
Right.
And so, you know, and I almost like veered the opposite way. I was like only eating things like Pop-Tarts and crap like that. Oh, oops, see, look at me. I just value judged.
Right.
It's so hard. Yeah.
Well, I know, but it's also like, it's about being human too, right? And again, me and my wife are very, you know, we've both done a lot of work on ourselves, a lot of therapy, a lot of 12-step, whatever. And like, we all know when someone's like full of it. We all have seen those Instagram accounts that are like, everything's perfect and my children are angels, and you know, that stuff that's like, no, I want to kill my kids today. That is honestly how I feel. It does not mean I don't love them. And you know, you talk about the value junctions. So here's one that my wife wants to kill people over. For me, not quite as much. When you do say like, my kids drive me nuts, I'm so happy they're back in school, and they're like, well, you're gonna miss it when they're gone and when they're older. And it's like, fuck you. That's not right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's the same thing as this other stuff we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally, it is, you know, and I wonder, you know, I think about how much social media has made it all worse, but that's a whole nother barrel of monkeys. That's the wrong analogy, but you know.
But again, I have to say that personally, I'm not someone that thought about it until, you know, I hit a certain age and I couldn't eat whatever I wanted, right? Like whatever that was for me 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I have no idea after 40, because it never mattered. And I do. And again, it's like, it's good to do, you know, we talk about like having good self-esteem, right? And I do feel better and therefore look better and act better or whatever when I'm eating better. However, if the scale says I weighed 2 pounds more and I feel shitty, I know that's not good. So it's like, how do we find that balance, I think, is the question.
Yeah. And, you know, I clearly do not have a great answer for it. But it's something that I think the more and more that we talk about it, and to be honest, I mean, this is the entire idea behind health at every size, which people like super controversial. You talk about thin privilege and people get like super up in arms about it.
No, privilege. That's a thing.
Oh, it's a real thing. Think about it. So, and this is something that actually, so for instance, the reason why there's so much fat phobia in this world, like that people, you cast judgment on somebody who is in a larger body, and you look at them, people look at them as lazy or not being able to control willpower.
Right.
I mean, I was in program with a lot of people who starved themselves, like probably worse than I did, and are in much, much larger bodies than me. But like people look at them and say, oh, well, they just don't eat as much. You have no willpower, you know? And so the problem is we have such a weight bias and a weight stigma in our society, and like things that we associate with people in larger bodies, it hurts us all. You know, the idea behind thin privilege is the fact that, and you have thin privilege too, is that you can walk into a store, you can find something on a rack, for instance, that fits you, or you can go onto an airplane and not have to buy 2 seats. You know, or that people aren't going to judge you for what you're putting in your mouth, like, because like, oh, you should go on a diet. So anyway, I will get off my soapbox right there, because I could go on there for a long time, but yes, there's a lot in there.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. And I know that we do have this like epidemic, right? Like we are dying more, we are getting more coronary blah blah blah, right? Like this whole idea of like the ripping people off the couch that everyone talks about is because it is an issue, right? And there are like health concerns. I mean, so you know, you talk about how like my wife and I, like, we're trying not to sort of like mess up our kids that way, but like we talk about it all the time, right? And like, God bless, I might cry now. God bless little Jackson. Like he's 10 and has kind of put on a few, and like he's mentioned it, and we're like, oh man, right?
And you don't know how to navigate it, right?
No, because clearly we talk about it. We talk about, I mean, listen, I'm a big believer in actions, not words. And so for the most part, our kids see mommy going to the gym every day, getting huge, daddy out there running. They know that's what we're about. And so I think that's I think that's going to affect him more than what we talk about. Oh, what is served in the house. But yeah, it's tough stuff, dude.
I mean, and yeah, in terms of, I can't, and I, you know, like I can't speak to the kids portion, but I always know for me, in the back of my mind, I told myself that like, if I ever wanted kids, I needed to address my eating disorder first. Cause the last thing that I ever wanted to do was to pass on, because kids are super observant, and I never wanted to pass that on to children, you know? And I'm thankful. People are like, well, did your parents screw you up? And someone's like, no, I don't know. My family was super normal when it came to food. Like there was never any diet talk. My parents were never on diets. And I was like, and I still ended up with an eating disorder. So like sometimes it's not environmental. Sometimes I guess it can be genetic too.
Yeah, but and again, the thing you said a minute ago, it's like I feel like it's just like the old days with alcoholism. It's like, why can't he just drink like a gentleman like the rest of us? Why can't he have one or two and not go out and buy crack? You know what I mean? It's
I
like,
know. Do not go out and buy crack.
I'm serious. Like that's a thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, I know. And I think that we all internally, we make those judgments sometimes without, like for things that we don't relate to, too. I mean, I think it's surprising the number of people who have suggested diets to me as a way to solve my eating issues. Like that I should like go on the all carnivore diet, for instance. And I'm like, yeah, that did you know? No, not going to work. Not going to.
Well, I think I told you that when I went through my stuff, people made a lot of suggestions, some of which were great. You know, you told me to read that book by Jane McGonigal, which definitely helped me. I didn't finish it, but it helped me. Or meditation apps. But then some people were like, all you need is Jesus. Like, that's all you need is to accept Jesus. Or like, or have you tried CBD and whatever? I'm not saying I'm for or against, but I'm just saying like, it's like, you know, we say in the program, like it's an inside job, man. Like that's for better or for worse. Like that's the deal.
Right. But did you have, so something that's been hard for me in coming that like 99% of everybody has been super positive and super supportive, but like I've had this small backlash of folks who have then like accused me of misleading everybody for the past however long that I've been in sport, or like that I should feel guilty that I was on magazine covers and things like that because my body was not made in a healthy way. And it's been really hard for me to reconcile. And I think those are the comments that get to me the worst, because I'm like, I don't know, like, I don't know if my body was a result of what I was doing, you know, like sometimes actually, like when you stop restricting your body, just like, sometimes it gets larger, sometimes it gets smaller, like you don't know, you know, but like, it's like this weird guilt that I feel like people are putting on me that I don't know if I actually should internalize, you know, like, should I feel guilty that I was on the cover of Runner's World and I had an eating disorder?
You should feel shame and demand that Runner's World destroy all of those magazines.
Just burn them.
2015 and 16. You should, like every cover ever. You were in that, remember you used to always be so proud of being in Playboy and Maxim without taking your clothes off?
Oh yeah.
Get rid of those magazines, like just burned in that. Dude, you listen, you know that as long as you're in the public at all, you were going to take shots no matter what.
That's true.
And I'm not saying, be above it all, don't take it personally, because I just went off on a guy, which totally unprofessional, totally not cool. And I just completely went off on a guy who I didn't think was very smart. And it's like, I should rise above and not care, but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, especially
we're human, but I just didn't know, like, if did you get backlash at all when you talked about your issues?
No, I mean, I got backlash when the most controversial thing I did was when I cheated at which is so silly now, this many years later. I cheated at a race and I skipped my burpees, and I got a lot of shit for that. I know it's so
I do remember that. I do.
But I did, like, at the time, like, you know what it's like to have like shame and a lie and that stuff, even though it seems so silly now, like at the time it was a big deal. But no, there was definitely no like bipolar backlash. It was just, you know, weird advice. But again, it's like, you're in a spot, if you're someone that's on magazine covers, you're going to get a lot of love and a lot of hate. There are people that really rooted for Matt Frazier to win again. And I'm sure there's a ton of people who are like, I hope he loses, or he's probably on drugs, or, you know what I mean?
Right. I know. It's totally true. I was just trying to figure out if it was something specific about the eating disorder aspect of it versus like a different mental health issue.
No, I just think we're all, including myself, we're all just so messed up. You know what I mean? People you know what I mean? Like, and again, like with food, it's like, I know that I would be a better, whatever, thinner, more, whatever human being if I didn't drink these, Dunkin' Donuts coffees. And I'm 10 pounds less than I weighed 3 months ago. And I could be 5 pounds less if I skip those altogether. And I'm just not ready to do, like, so who am I to judge that's not food. Whatever they put in here is not really a liquid. Like you called it water. Like,
yeah, but what is it? But so that's the thing, is that I asked, like, why is being thinner better?
We like looking at what our mind thinks is attractive. I don't know.
Right. And who taught us that? Companies, consumer culture, I think that, I don't know, there's a whole dismantling of the system that needs to occur, for sure.
Listen, dude, we're getting more and more woke every time. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, like, listen, there's certain things that aren't going to change, certainly not right away, right?
No.
Racism, sexism, whatever. But I do think that, dare I go there, the Me Too thing, like, those older white guys are kind of like done. Like, not that no one's going to abuse power, but like,
right.
The head of networks, if somebody's going to go, what? When they ask you to do something crazy, some people will, be victim to it. And then some people are going to go, you're a fucking creep and you're going like, there's too much, like, I think institutionally that, don't you think? Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long process, for sure.
But you're not going to get to be like the head of a network for 30 years and everybody just goes, oh, that's just him. Just don't be alone in the office with that guy. Everybody knows he's a creep.
Oh man. Yeah. I'm not even gonna touch that one.
All right. I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, don't apologize.
We live in very interesting times.
We
Amelia.
do. Let me. Yeah. I think the more people that just can admit that they're super fucked up, the more happier we'll all be.
I concur.
I mean, it was funny yesterday. Somebody tweeted and said, like, I'm thankful for people like Amelia Boone and Tim Ferriss who speak up about their mental health issues. And I was like, 5 years ago, no one would have, like, could you picture like that tweet 5 years ago? Like, no, Amelia talking about mental health issues, like either of us, I was like, it's just funny how people evolve,
Right.
So, I don't know.
Maybe it'll swing back the other way and people will, I don't know, not be cool with people having mental issues. I don't know. Trust me, again, listen, I was as big of a judge as anybody, right? I mean, I told you, like, if you were like depressed, I was like, maybe you should get over that shit, sad sack, and Spartan up.
Right.
And I think
don't even get me started on the Spartan up thing, but yeah.
Well, no. So I saw you. Let's talk about this before I let you go. I don't know how much time you have, but yeah, I did see your tweet. I've never really mastered Twitter. You're big on the Twitter. There was a Spartan up that was like, if you're cold, you're wearing too many clothes. If you're tired, you're sleeping too much. And if you're hungry, if you're not hungry, you're eating too much. Something like that. Right.
And I understand I believe that the quote maybe was taken out of context. I will say I did not listen to the podcast. But that quote in isolation, I was like, oh, you're fucking, I mean,
right.
I love Joe. I love Spartan. Spartan is obviously, and I'll start this, but like, I do believe at a certain point, it can be super detrimental to people and their mental health, and thinking that just make everything as miserable as possible and blah, 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 and make your life all about suffering. and whatnot. And for a very long time, I did that to myself. I believed in that, I just think that the message, there are some people that I realize who maybe need that message, but I've never found fear and judgment to be a motivator, and I've never found guilt and shame to be a sustainable motivator. Maybe somebody can guilt you into like doing something, but are you going to stick with it if like somebody is, like after a long time, like you need a different motivation.
If that worked, I would call my mother more.
Yeah. See? There you go.
I think Joe is probably one of the least woke people, right? Because he doesn't think there's anything wrong with that statement, which is like, all right, dude. I do want to say, because this was going to come up in the in that thing about, it doesn't have to be a part of your mouth. Like, I do have to say that, again, this is new for me too.
Yeah.
It is okay to be a little bit hungry.
Right.
Like, eating to be full and over full is kind of how we've trained ourselves, and like, woof, right? And now we don't need to eat again for 6 hours because we're so fucked. Like during the day, I can not get up and snack and it be okay, because that little craving can pass. And again, for me, that's been a big one.
Yeah. And everyone comes back with different, and I understand. I come with perspective of like, for 20 years, I never allowed myself to be full. So like, that's probably not a good thing for me to be like, to be thinking about, like, but everyone comes with it from a different perspective, so. But yes, I mean, I don't get the Spartan emails anymore, but somebody forwarded.
After you hit unsubscribe 25 different times from Spartan Food, Spartan Daily, Spartan Race, Spartan Up Podcast.
Right, exactly. But I mean,
get out of the Spartan email ecosystem.
It's really, really hard. But like somebody forwarded me a food one that was like like, this is how many burpees you have to do for like how many calories
that one.
consume and stuff like that. And I just like, exercise should not be punishment for eating.
That's a big one. I concur. Running laps shouldn't be punishment either.
No, like it just, those really need to be separated. And that is my biggest, if I could get Spartan to change one thing, hands down. I'm all about being cold, that is, I'm cold and miserable and hauling rocks up mountains. I like that part. There's that part of me that really likes that pain. But I also think that in other parts of our life, we need more balance.
Well, I will say that they're putting this Death Race documentary together. And of course, they've included the famous shot of you in the creek there in the winter wearing, I don't know, like
wearing
underwear on your head. And,
yes.
And like, Joe saying there's no crying in the Death Race. You're just like
sobbing,
freezing and sobbing.
I still have frostbite on my toes from that. Like my toes are super sensitive to cold now because of being in that stupid river for so long. But yeah, that was a fun experience. No regrets.
All right. Well, I guess I'll see you in Atlanta for World's Toughest Mudder.
Yeah, I'll be there. Are you going to be in Tahoe?
I will be in Tahoe. Why will you be in Tahoe? Are you allowed to say?
Because I live 3 hours from there.
Oh, well then you should come.
Yeah, no, I am. And I'll be doing stuff with the trail stuff through Ultra.
Oh, cool.
And are you going to be in West Virginia? Because I'll also be in West Virginia.
I was going to be in West Virginia, and then I traveled too much 2 months in a row and was like, I'm not going to go.
Got it. Well, yes. So no, I'm doing some stuff. I'm dabbling because Ultra is the sponsor of the trail series. So
I have done 2 Spartan Trail races.
What'd you think of them?
I love them.
Yeah.
I'm going to do more. I'm going to do the one in Tahoe. I don't know if they're getting to the non-OCR community because, of course, so far it's just been like people doing OCR and then like, I can run another race tomorrow and get another medal.
Yeah, that's probably what I pictured would happen. And the whole, everyone ragged on them about the whole spectator fees and whatnot, which she's not going to go there. But yes, I understand it's not for everybody. It's not their cup of tea, but we'll see. What's
your ultra shoe of choice?
I love the Temps. I'm a big Temp fan.
Okay.
And the Temps and the Superior are my two go-tos for sure. So.
not the King MTs, because you don't do OCRs much anymore, because
Yeah,
people.
probably. Yeah. But if I do, when I am going to do another OCR, just depends on when. I mean, I'll wear the Kingdom teams like for World Steps Matter, for instance.
Right. Do you have a relatively, like, do you need like a wider toe box? Are you one of those people, you a half size up type person?
No, I actually have a very narrow foot, which is kind of fun. Like, and so that's why I was kind of initially like being like, do I need ultras? Because I have super narrow feet. But now that I have that super wide toe box with so much room in there, like I can't put on any other shoes.
Yeah, you can't go back. I like normal shoes in a half size up. The thinner shoes that are out there,
Yeah.
like the Solomons, I'm like, well, who are these for? Like, you could probably fit a Solomon, but like, I feel like I can't, and most people can't.
No, even Solomons are too narrow. Like I do. That's why I used to lose so
Okay,
many
hang on a second.
toenails.
Hang on a second. Solomons are too narrow for you, and you are an admittedly narrow foot. So
Yeah, I lose toenails. I have no idea. No idea who can wear them. Killian can wear them. I just assured myself I ever wanted a Solomon.
I was gonna say, there you go. You just ruined that.
Shoot. No, I'm joking. But yeah, so they're too narrow if you want to keep your toenails.